This is an inline condition heading back to the Skylink node itself, where you take the escalators up to the Skylink station. And through the geometry of the space, we allow it to be visible both from the concourse as well as those passing through to the Skylink node. They're also adjacent to several different hold lounges where passengers are waiting for their aircraft. A third condition that is existing here is what we're calling a corner condition. These corner conditions are kind of few, and there are some out there, but it allows an opportunity to be on one side in the inline condition, but then the brand turns the corner and allows for that alternate opportunity. So the overall concession program looks something like this in Terminal A. You'll notice the higher concentration of concession programs in the nodes themselves, with a scattering of various concessionaires throughout the rest of the terminal. Online now for your download, some of you may have already been able to download this, is the infrastructure page that, or guideline that actually describes the utility delivery and matrix that are available to you, so you can evaluate that in your proposals. And then at the end of October, we will be posting the design guidelines so that you can bring those down and evaluate the design opportunities. Okay, with that, I'll turn it back over to Zanola.
Don't go far, because we'll have Q&A after a while. We talked a lot in regards to passenger flow and how we're designing the building, and I wanted to share with you guys just a little of a simulation. I'm not sure if time is going to permit for me to get through this, but again, all of these materials that we're sharing today will be online. And have my aunt started yet? I can't touch the button. Okay. Those little bitty things there, pretend those are passengers. And actually, in just looking at the various zones that we have, this would be like the north section of the terminal. This is the center section. And you kind of see how people move around. And basically what we have in terms of flow, you've got the Skylink areas, one at the north and one at the south. We have checkpoints. We have a center checkpoint. We have a checkpoint on either side of the north and south. And you see how people enter the building and are able to kind of move around the building. And throughout different points of the day, what this simulation kind of shows you is how that flow will progress. And basically, what that also demonstrates is that we've tried really hard to bring all of our inventory around the major flow points. Where we did have a lot of inventory in the past, let's say on the north side at the tail end, well, you don't get a lot of traffic there, and what you'll notice is that we don't have a lot of inventory there. So we tried to concentrate the majority of our inventory in 80% of the space in the top of the U. And it's going to be really cool in terms of just looking at how people will use the terminal, how they exit, and actually some of the ants that are moving there. And we try to get them as big as possible, so you'll have fun trying to pull this down on your computer. But we worked very closely with our Air Service Development Department, Mr. Jeff Bienvenu, in working with the airlines in regards to trying to forecast what their future passenger flow is going to look like. So I'm going to get out of this if I can. And I'm going to bring up Mr. Bienvenu, because I know those have been some questions. Well, gee, well, what are you guys basing this on? And what are the airlines doing? And I do have a commercial in regards to that. We cannot warrant or guarantee that the passenger flow is going to remain the same. And I think we had that articulated and documented. My legal counsel made sure that I have it there, that things can change in an airport environment. And with that said,
thanks very much. Which button do I hit? This,
that one.
That one, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. I have a pretty brief presentation here on passengers and where we think they're going in the terminal over the next 10 years. The agenda, just want to give you some historical view on passengers at DFW, talk a little bit about overall passengers, specifically American. As we all know, American pretty much dominates the airport. They have 85% of the share. Talk a little bit about Terminal A and the flow of passengers, or where we think the flow of passengers are going to go in terms of numbers. And then talk a little bit about some of our efforts on new entrant airlines here at DFW. This chart shows that we've certainly seen a drop-off in passengers over the last 5 years, although I can't see it real well. Dropped off about 5%, I believe, from 2006 to, or actually 2007 to 2008. But we've been relatively lucky compared to other airports. I mean, if you look at major airports around the system, around the country, you see 10, 20, 30% drop off. So we've been fortunate in that respect that we had the small drop and we flattened out. And where we see it going over the next 10 years, and like Zanola said, this is certainly more of an art than a science. We think 2.1% on average is what we're looking at. One of the real unknowns is what happens in 2014 when the Wright Amendment goes away, Love Field opens up, Southwest is allowed to fly unimpeded to anywhere in the country. But in average, we think 2.1% is what we're looking at for overall growth. When we look at American specifically, our estimate's 2.5%. So that's good news. We think relative to the overall growth, American will be aggressive, and this is their primary hub, sort of their mother hub, so to speak. So we're looking for relatively significant growth over the 10-year period. Wanted to talk a little bit about impacts to Terminal A specifically from the trip. I will caveat and say we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, there's a lot of discussion going on with Perfecto Solis's group, American Airlines, as to what gates come down during the various phases, not only in Terminal E, but throughout all of the terminals. Based on conversations we've had with American, we think 10% is probably the number of passengers that will be relocated out of A primarily over to Terminal C. Again, it all has to do with phasing and how it all works out as gates come out of the system, but that's sort of our best guess as of right now. And finally, wanted to talk a little bit about new entrants at DFW. I can't go into a whole lot of specifics other than I can tell you Virgin America is showing up here on December 1st, which is a real exciting development for us. We have a real active air service development group. We're talking to a lot of domestic carriers. We're talking to Americans certainly about their growth. And in Terminal D, as we mentioned up here, we've got some real decent prospects for coming in the short term. So as I said, we're looking at a 2.1% average growth over the period, but we may see some pretty exciting things over the next 5 years, maybe even sooner. No promises, but that's sort of what we're looking at. And that wraps it up. Are there any questions on anything that I said? Okay.
Actually, we'll entertain any questions that you guys may have from some of the other presentations that you've heard thus far. And again, write them down. If we don't get to them, we'll definitely post those questions and the answers online. But before we lose Mr. Solis and Mr. Payton, just want to make sure that if there's any questions about that, if you can raise your hand, and we've got Mike Spears running around with a mic, and I see one in the back over here, Mike.
Hi there. I'm just wondering if you have any information available that shows not only how many customers are flying through each gate, but the percentage that are actually staying in the terminal and transferring to another flight, whether it's within that same terminal, whether they're taking the train, or whether they're arriving at their destination.
I can't actually see who was, oh, sorry about that. We do have information by gate. It doesn't go back many years, but yes, we do have information from AA specifically about how many enplanements are departing from each gate. As far as your second question on dwell time, we don't track that, which I think is probably pretty important, a bit of information for you to have, but we do not track that. I don't know if you do, Zanola.
Yeah, We do have some average dwell times based on what the customers or the passengers have told us, and we will post those online. And we have those not by gate, but we have them by terminal.
Good morning. Are you planning on creating any smoking locations?
As of now, I am not certain that's going to happen in this terminal, but we'll get that clarified and provide that online. There was a question over there.